Perfect. Don't forget the timer. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Cats and Bolts podcast. It is episode number 19 of Florida's favorite hockey show. Can I say podcast? Coming to you live from live to us, Podcast Junkie Studio here in beautiful downtown Boca Raton, Florida. It's NHL Talk with a Florida twist. I'm your host, Rod Peterson, and Serena Taylor is with us for our 19th episode. We can go to the wide shot, Benny Boy, because it's a fan favorite. Randy Moller is here, the longtime color commentator for Florida Panthers hockey and play-by-play guy at times too, and NHL alum. Moles, the viewers wanted you, and it took us a while to get you. I really appreciate you coming down.
Well, I'm wound up tighter than a new toy, so I'm ready to go and fire those questions. We'll talk Panther hockey, we'll talk NHL and that. It's exciting to be back on the show with you guys. Last time we were on a different location, and it was right along the beach and that. But it's always fun. It's always fun to come on. You guys are great. You got great coverage of the NHL and the Panthers and that. So we appreciate it.
Oh man, you know how to make a guy feel good, Moles. And by the way, since we're here, that's the beach house you were talking about in Pompano. There's a $100 gift card for you from our friends at the beach house. Oh. You can take the beautiful Mrs. Moller there today,
now,
or anybody.
Now, is this the same one as I got last one that didn't work when I went and took my wife there?
You tell
I'm
me.
Just kidding. I'm kidding.
That's the guy. Yeah. So, okay, she got a lot of questions. I got a lot of questions. I'll tell you, we are brought to you by DraftKings, Beach House, Pompano, and also Boresco, which is right across the street. But I'm going to tell you this. I put it to our viewers. Who do you want on the Cats and Bolts podcast? Two guys' names came up the most, Peter Worrell and Randy Moller. What would be your response to that? Moles, how does that make you feel?
Well, good thing I didn't go up against Peter Worrell when he was a player, and that. Boy, was he tough. And that, but I love Pete, and he's a big part of our alumni down here, and what he's done, he's dedicated himself to really teaching and growing the game of hockey. And he has been a coach, he's been a mentor, he's been an instructor down here, and he's just got a smile on his face. And I think he really found his niche, and he's a big part of the Florida Panthers and what they're trying to do and growing the game. And now with the new practice facility at the War Memorial opening up, that he's got a big role in that. So
good.
I'm happy to be with him. It's great whenever I see him. You just don't want to share a buffet with him or be around when there's food, when there's snacks, because he still has pretty good appetite. So do I, but
he's not wasting away.
No, he's
sure.
not.
I got a list of questions, so we'll go back and forth. Serena, what do you got for Moles?
Oh, I have a million questions. But first of all, thank you so much for coming on today. Really appreciate it. I guess I just kind of want to talk about how you got into broadcasting in general, because to be honest, when I moved to Florida and I turned on the TV and I was like, who is this color guy doing the Panthers game? He is freaking unbelievable. And you do still have a Canadian accent. So I can hear it. I'm like, it's a former player. And then when they said, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. But how did you get into broadcasting in the first place?
Well, I think it's my personality. Look, I came down here. I signed as a free agent with the Florida Panthers their second year. Not their first year, their second year in the summer after their first year. I came down here, signed a 2-year contract. I couldn't play anymore. My back and my hips were so bad. I muscled through 16 games, and then basically my career was over. Brian Murray and Doug McLean was the head coach. Brian Murray was the general manager. Chuck Fletcher was assistant general manager at the time. Great guys. And they came to me and said, Randy, you can't play anymore. And I said, no, sugar. I can't play anymore. But put me to work. I'll do whatever you want. And that. So we were trying to grow as a new franchise, grow the game of hockey down here. I was dropping pucks from Homestead all the way to Orlando and even Fort Pierce. I was dropping pucks at Pee Wee tournaments. I was doing clinics and that, and absolutely fell in love with it. My playing career was over. I was looking for something to do. And the team was very, very good to me. And they said, hey, if you want to be around here and help us grow this franchise and grow the game of hockey. And then my personality, there's a gentleman, Alain Chevrier, that played for the New Jersey Devils, goalie, yeah. And that he's got a very successful insurance business, plus he had 4 kids at the time. He was doing color the first year. He just couldn't do it anymore. So timing's everything, guys. I fell in it. They asked me if I want to do color on the radio, and the rest is history. I've been here for going on 30 years now.
Okay, well, it's funny you say that because I put out to the audience what are some questions for Randy Moller. As you see, I don't like to work real hard. I just put it to everybody. D-Lo wrote me and goes, a lot of people would, D-Lo, here's your question, D-Lo. He goes, a lot of people may not remember that Randy played because you've been doing color for so long.
Yeah.
He goes, can you ask him his first NHL goal?
My first, I remember it like it was yesterday. It was in Montreal, and it was against Rick Wamsley. Not Rick Wamsley. I'll think of the name and the goaltender, and it was a big slap shot from the blue line. Unfortunately, it was our sixth goal, and we lost 10-6. So it didn't mean much. It was like the last minute of the third period.
Rick Hayward?
Can't remember. It was somebody that I'll think
we'll
of it in a minute. We'll get it in a minute.
Yeah,
but anyways, that was my first goal, and I never forget. Moose DuPont was my defense partner at the time. I'm 19. Moose is like 37, and so when I scored, I'm on my way, and somebody was saying, "Oh, get the puck, get the puck," and Moose DuPont says, "Drag the net off. He's probably never going to score again." So.
What a partner.
What a partner.
Yeah.
Moose DuPont was my first defense partner, and the stories are just. We started the season my first year, and he would come off the ice if we were struggling, and he would say 250, 250, 250. Finally, after about the fourth game, I said to Moose, I said, "Why do you say 250? Around the boards, 250." He says, "Give it to me. They pay me $250 to ring it around the boards."
Wow.
Okay. All right.
What a career Moose DuPont. Look him up. Which, by the way, 815 NHL games. That's no slouch for Randy Moller.
Well, I fooled him for about 800.
Between 1981 and 1995 with Quebec, New York Rangers, Buffalo, and Florida. So when you say he was your first partner, that was Quebec?
Quebec, yeah. When I was drafted in 11th overall by the Quebec Nordiques, and 815 games. The thing is, I tell people now or whatever that they say, "Well, what happened, towards the end?" I said, "Well, I was a stay-at-home defenseman, and then one day they told me to stay at home." And that was the end of it. And, I've lived for almost 30 years here in Boca Raton, and I came home after I met with the team. And I wasn't protected in the waiver draft. Remember those waiver drafts that they used to have and that? And so they came to me and said, "Well, Randy, I don't know what we're going to do, but you're not going to be on the team or whatever." And I remember coming home to my house with a mortgage in Boca Raton with 3 small kids. And I said to my wife, my lovely wife, I said, "It's over, honey." And she goes, "Well, what are you going to do?" I said, "Well, just give me 10 minutes or whatever, and we'll figure something out." And honest to God, within the month or whatever, I was already doing appearances for the team, and it just graduated with the relationship and that. And then I was offered the job on radio, and as you can probably tell, folks, I don't have trouble with the word talking and communicating. So
well, they need guys like that. And by the way, so we're going to jump back and forth between viewer questions, her questions, my questions. But I do have one for you. I say this not just kissing your butt. I believe you are the face of the Panthers in South Florida, the most recognizable guy. You're on television. You played for them. But if not you, who would be the next one? Not on the current team, because I think that would be Tkachuk. But who historically?
Billy Lindsay.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah, Billy, because he scored up until last year in the finals, obviously, and the playoffs with Tkachuk scoring all those goals. But Billy scored that famous goal to get them to the finals, and that. And he's been soaking it for so many years now. I hate him for it or whatever. I'm just kidding. No, but Billy was here from the very beginning. And then after his career was over, he was interested. He had a place down here, and I was working for the team at the time. So I went to the team and said, "It's a natural." And he's he's knowledgeable, and he's very recognizable, and that. So, yeah, and he's been with the team ever since and that. So it would be Billy. Long-winded answer.
That's a good one.
I like him. He's a good egg, that guy. So I kind of want to go back to, I really feel like what's gotten lost since the Nordiques moved is the rivalry between Quebec and the Habs.
Yeah.
Talk about the intensity about that, because I'm dying to hear it from a player standpoint.
Well, we realized that there was such a rivalry, and number one was the ownership. The Quebec Nordiques were owned by O'Keefe, and the Canadians are owned by Molson, and so there's a fierce business rivalry.
Beer companies, folks. Beer companies.
Yeah, and that. They were always intense, and we always seemed to meet in the playoffs, and we beat them a couple times. They beat us 3 or 4 times the times that I was there, and we had all kinds of brawls and that. But I didn't realize. I mean, we were so hyped up in those games during the regular season, even preseason games. We'd play in Three Rivers, and it would just be the fighting and the rivalry and that and the chirping going back and forth. But it took me a number of years after I was traded to the Rangers to look back on my career, those 7 years that I played in Quebec, how fierce that rivalry was. We didn't realize it because we were in the middle of it. It's almost like, the utmost respect, you talk to people that were in certain conflicts, wars or whatever, and they were so busy of what they were trying to do and then they look back after years and go, wow, I was involved in this, involved in that. It was kind of the same. And they were war. Every game was a war, and I knew that I was going to fight every game, and that was just the stress of it all, the anxiety of it, and that. But there was a lot of highs, there was a lot of lows, but every game was just a war. And that's, I don't think there's been any other rivalry in sports. Maybe I'm a little biased because of physicality. Maybe Edmonton and Calgary back in those 80s, late 80s, whatever, where they were winning one cup and then Calgary won, and then they were all armed up with all the tough guys on both sides or whatever. But yeah, that Montreal Quebec was really special. And that I enjoyed every minute I was there in Quebec. My first son was born there, and my wife and I, we loved it there. Absolutely loved it. Couldn't speak a word of English. They couldn't, or a word of French, and they couldn't speak hardly any English when we first got there. But they love hockey, and they loved us. And as long as you tried, as long as you made an effort to communicate and accept the French culture, you can do no wrong there. And I think it's still the same way. I love it there. I think it'd be great. It'd be great to get another team. I understand that there's some nuances why they haven't got a team back again, but I'd love to see them get another. They got great fans there.
I agree. They love their hockey in Quebec.
But the problem is they have to cheer for the Montreal Canadiens or the Ottawa Senators. That's the problem.
Shifting gears a bit, we could call this our All-Star episode. 1 year ago, the All-Star festivities were here. Yep. This year, they're in Toronto. What do you remember from 1 year ago when the NHL brought the All-Star festivities to South Florida?
Wow. I mean, 90% of it is already planted here, and the people, you couldn't believe the people that wanted to come down to that All-Star game last year because of the weather and the beach and everything. I think the NHL and especially the Florida Panthers really went over and above, and with all the fan interactions and all the different things that they're doing, the slap shot, knocking over the surfboards, and the Kachuk brothers dunking each other in the dunk tank and all that kind of stuff. My memory of it as well with the Alumni Association, we put together a kind of a fundraiser, and we had like a all-star cruise, a Hall of Fame cruise, and we had Wayne Gretzky, Paul Coffey, Mark Messier, Chris Chelios on the cruise, and Glenn Healy that runs the NHL alumni, and that we put this whole thing together, and we had a lot of sponsors and a few high-profile fans that came on, and we raised some money. We had a really good time. So for me, I was a part of that. That was fun. I passed on my tickets for the actual skills competition and the actual All-Star game because I've been to a number of them. We hosted another one years and years ago. My mother was able to come down. So I gave my tickets away, and that's for the fans, and that's for them to enjoy it. So I kind of took a step back and just watched it on TV. But I think my memories were everything was positive. The weather was good. It was hot, but the weather was good, and I think everybody I'm reading, guys, what Toronto and all the different things that they've had on this email, all the different fan initiatives and clinics and official clinics and girls hockey and seniors and learn to play, and that Toronto's going to be absolutely fantastic.
I agree. That's the place where really it should be.
Yeah. And you can, for fans, and I tell people all the time, if you've never seen a game either in Montreal or in Toronto, especially Toronto, and you're lucky enough to see the Panthers and the Maple Leafs on Hockey Night in Canada on a Saturday night, and you can go in there early and go to the Hockey Hall of Fame and have lunch at Wayne Gretzky's and do all the different things and that. And people that have done that, and now you add an All-Star weekend of that with all the different fan activities and initiatives going on, it'll be a fantastic, especially for fans that go for the first time. Not people from Brampton or Mississauga, people that are traveling from wherever and go to Toronto and experience. And it really is a special arena, and I think the NHL is going to do a fabulous job with it.
Speaking of all-stars, we call ourselves the Cats and Bolts podcast. You see the Lightning logo behind me. With this All-Star Week, Sergei Kucherov is there, representing Tampa.
Well-deserved.
Right, well, of course. And for the Panthers, Bob and Sam Reinhart. So obviously you'll be watching. You'll be watching more closely for those guys.
Yeah, I'll watch. I'm interested in it and that. It's there's a lot of gimmicks to it and that, but I think the fans enjoy it. It is for the fans, and that's where when I see somebody maybe criticize, oh, the All-Star, it's just a big fluff thing and that. Well, it's for the sponsors and it's for the fans, and it's a celebration of where everybody can get together. So if you have that right frame of mind, I think you can really enjoy all the activities and that. So I'll be watching.
I think
hopefully Bob does well.
I was going to say, I think it's his third All-Star game. I think for Bobrovsky.
Yeah.
Tell us about him. You've been around him quite a while.
Hasn't changed. I get tired of myself hearing how it's monotonous. Sergei Bobrovsky, he prepares himself every day the same way, and he is ultra focused, both mentally and physically, in the things that he does in practice. And you've seen him, and you know some of the moves. And he is very methodical of what he does. And what I really appreciate about him is he does not change his demeanor, whether the team's won 10 in a row or lost 10 in a row. He goes about his bit, and he talks about it in post-game and that. It's about a process. It's a process. I've got to make sure I recover and get ready for tomorrow's practice because we got a big game against whoever the next day after. It's a process for him. The ultimate professional. He's great with us. He's great with our Bally's team, and he's very, very available. The team has made him available in that, but he's a very focused athlete, and you can see that he wants that ultimate prize, which is to raise that Stanley Cup. That's the one thing that's missing in his career, correct?
That's it.
He's won his Vezinas. He's won the All-Stars. He wants to win that Stanley Cup. It's amazing, guys, how, and it is a cliche, he wants to win his Stanley Cup. These guys are so motivated and will merge right into Sam Reinhart. Same thing with Sam Reinhart. He talked about the taste that he had last year in the finals and the disappointment of climbing that mountain and getting there so close and then not getting that cup. And these guys are motivated. They want it. You don't think Matthew Tkachuk wants to win a Stanley Cup? You don't think Aaron Ekblad? Everybody, all the way down the line, including Paul Maurice or whatever, that's the holy grail. Because once you win the Masters, you're always a Masters champion, correct? Same thing with the Stanley Cup. You win a Stanley Cup, you're always known that you won a Stanley Cup. Whether you're first line center or you were one of the Black Aces. One of the Black Aces or whatever.
Yeah.
Ask Nick Kyprios and these guys, Eddie Olczyk and these guys that were the Black Aces when the Rangers won. And then the memories of being on a team and that togetherness of conquering the ultimate challenge is to win the cup, and you did it together in that locker room. I wish that's the only thing that was missing from my career. I went to the semifinals once and had a taste of it or whatever, but that was one. I have no regrets, but that's one that I would love. And so I've hitched my wagon on the Florida Panthers, and hopefully they can win the Stanley Cup. And I've told everybody that will listen to me, including the president, Matt Caldwell, that if we win the Stanley Cup, I'm the first one over the boards, and I'm going to be grabbing that Stanley Cup, and I'm going to be going like this.
Did he have a problem with it? Probably not.
No. He doesn't.
We'll
Said, "No
see
problem,
him and
Chris, no
Billy
problem."
Lindsay fighting over who's
Yeah,
getting
you
so
would
Imagine
Billy-
me getting tackled by some security guard or whatever because Moller's jumping over the boards, going to grab that trophy.
I'd be disappointed if you didn't.
rip it out of Bettman's hands. Just step
No,
right
no,
in.
no.
Step right
I'd
in.
wait my turn, but that cup's not leaving the ice until I.
You know, I loved what you said about Bobrovsky and his professionalism, but also his focus and thinking about this is a marathon, not a sprint. And that is really important because growing up, he didn't grow up in Canada. You don't dream about winning the Stanley Cup when you're a kid in Russia or whatever. I would assume
They were
not.
Olympic golds. They wanted the Olympic golds. That was
so
their
it's
big
different,
one, yeah.
but it's the focus. And I look at Tampa, and John Cooper has that same mentality. This is a marathon, not a sprint. Everybody calm down.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see Tampa getting overly excited. Like we had the conversation. He's like, you think Tampa's going to make the playoffs? Yeah. There's no doubt in my mind. Tampa just has something special. You don't see them getting wound up about anything. And Bobrovsky, as a goaltender to do that, that's why he played the way he did last year.
No, and very similar too is Vasilevsky, their goaltender.
Right.
He goes up. They're very similar. He goes about. He's very on point. He doesn't get these goaltenders now, and they have to be because, as you mentioned, it's a marathon, not a sprint. They don't get rattled. They don't get rattled by giving up 3 goals on 3 shots in the first period. They don't get rattled if the team has lost 3 or 4 in a row. It's a process. You go about your business and prepare for the next time that you've got to go on the ice. And I really admire these players nowadays because let's face it, they all are well compensated to the point where a lot of them, Sergei Bobrovsky, could retire tomorrow and never have to work another day in his life. That's not him. He wants to win, and he wants to win the ultimate prize.
It was funny when Minnesota was here and watching Marc-Andre Fleury and the
Same
way he
thing.
plays. And he's so much more flamboyant than Bobrovsky. He's an old French goaltender versus a Russian goaltender. It's two completely different things.
Well, I think it's different personalities too.
Sure.
Because the Flower, he's always smiling and laughing, and I hear that he plays all these practical jokes and that. But
Yeah.
there's a guy as well. He's won his Stanley Cups and that, but he is still hungry to get there again because he knows what the feeling is like. And I think with these lot of players, if you boil it right down, the players that have won the Cup, Mark Messier talks about this as well. I want him to experience that with me. You've never done it. I've done it. I love you. I want you to experience that. I think that's why these teams are so galvanized. And good on Vegas last year because first year they went almost to the Holy Grail to win the Cup. They've had a taste. They've had the experience and that. And for them, and you talk to Jonathan Marchessault and some of these guys, Riley Smith or whatever, finally winning that Cup after even what they've gone through over those few years in Vegas, whatever, it's pretty satisfying.
You know, it's interesting, too. You talk about Bob. I'm a huge Bob fan. He needs to be the next bobblehead in our set here.
We have the Panthers haven't had a bobblehead of Bob yet?
Not yet, no. But Dale Talon
okay.
was in this chair and talked about Bob after he signed the bag, as they say in the football world. He got the bag, right? $10.5 million. He went in the tank a little bit, I guess, the next year. I don't really remember that, but Dale said he felt so much pressure to show that he deserved or was going to earn this.
There was so much expectation of him. Okay, Bob, he got this big contract. He's in Florida. And they expected everybody around the NHL, all expected him to win every game. And I said it. I said it, and I've been consistent. I've never had a problem with Sergei Bobrovsky's performance. Has he won every game? And when you talked about that first year that he was down? No, but he was playing for a new team. The team was in transition and a lot of that. Did Bob have a Vezina Trophy season? No. But I never have a problem with Sergei Bobrovsky. You know that he's going to be prepared, and that I'm loving that he's getting the accolades. Then not only this year, but last year when he took over in a very tough situation from Alex Line, and here's the keys. It's your car back again, and for him to be the ultimate professional and say, and not pout or anything, be a good teammate and say, okay, it's on me now. I've got the net, and then look what he did.
Honestly, I just love him. I got more viewer comments or questions, unless you have
Fire.
something. Okay. Joe Lazito's in New York. and he told me to ask you.
Oh, he was that guy that was up in the blue seats from New York that used to boo me when I was playing for the
Probably.
Rangers?
Probably.
Joe, I
The
know where you
Islanders.
live. I know where you live. I'm coming.
I got his number here if you want. Joe Lazito. He was at the game the other night at New York. He's probably booing you then at UBS Arena. He sent me a picture from the game, you guys at the Islanders. But he says, I'm to ask you about the Good Friday Massacre.
Against the Montreal Canadiens.
Do you remember? I don't remember. You got to refresh my memory.
Well, it was
Joe remembers.
It was one of the series that we played with the Montreal Canadiens, and like what year it was. Was that 87? Maybe 87, 88. And anyways, and yeah, it was heating up in that series, and we were in Montreal, and the brawl started, and it just continued, and I was fighting Chris Nyland, and he cut me for 20 over the eye, and that's when Dale Hunter was starting another brawl, and Louis Slager sucker punched Jean Amel, who was playing for the Canadiens at the time, and it was just there was fights all over the ice, and unfortunately we lost that game, and then we ended up losing that series. And I got pictures of going to Bermuda after the season's over to get away because we really had to get out of Quebec City. Our fans were upset. Everybody was very emotional at the time. And we got pictures in Bermuda. And I looked like a bloodhound. I got stitches, 20 stitches over the eye. My eyes completely closed or whatever. Oh, yeah, it was a great few days in Bermuda.
Ripped your face apart.
Yeah.
I
ended up playing with Chris Nyland in New York.
What a beauty. What a great guy.
Yeah, and we became very good friends.
Yeah.
And that, but at the time, he's playing for the Montreal Canadiens. I'm playing for, we were enemies, absolute enemies. So, bygones be bygones.
Of course. Good guys. While we're back to that Stanley Cup final from last year thing, you talk about jumping over the boards and grabbing the cup. Did you think you were going to win it? Well, like when you get that far, you think you're going to win it. Or did you think, because it ended in 5, it wasn't much of a series, unfortunately.
To be totally honest, you always have an opportunity, and the way Tkachuk was performing and the way Bob was in net, and that especially sweeping Carolina in the semifinals, 4 straight, which nobody saw coming. But we knew, and obviously there was a little inside information as well that we couldn't really broadcast or make public, and that how beat up our team was. Tkachuk had a broken sternum. Both Montour and Ekblad came out that they were playing with separated shoulders. There was other injuries as well, and they were just so beat up in that. And it takes a little bit of everything. And congratulations and good on them. The Vegas Golden Knights went through 4 tough series, except for Eichel getting dinged up a little bit. They were 100% healthy. And health has a lot to do with it when you get into that 4th round. And the Panthers were not healthy. They were on a shoestring and one leg. And what happened, and it wasn't really a surprise. I wish, looking back now, as Panther fans would agree with me, that series with Vegas with 2 100% healthy teams. Could there be a difference? I believe there probably could.
I don't agree. I think Vegas was so strong last year that just after watching them when they beat Edmonton, because obviously I watched those games, and they flipped a switch in that series that I don't know the way Florida played. There were times where I was almost embarrassed for the Panthers. Yeah, they're probably injured, but they're not getting the puck out of their zone. They're making stupid passes, whatever. Vegas never did that.
No.
They were just... And it wouldn't have mattered who they played.
Absolutely.
Correct. Has nothing to do with the Panthers. No. It was just, I don't know if anybody could have beat them last year, just like the year before. I don't think anybody could have beat Colorado.
Correct.
So strong.
And because of how focused they were, and they were all running on the same, and on all cylinders, and that they could go with 4 lines, and those the 3rd and the 4th line, they have those heavy wingers, and that just wear teams down. And it's I mean, it was fun, and the Panthers have nothing to be ashamed of, and that I just wish that they were a little bit healthier with some of their star players, because it might have made a little bit more of a difference. Maybe more, maybe not win, but it wouldn't have been over getting smoked in Game 5 to lose the series.
And then you have guys like Kachuk that are not 100%. You got to move guys around. Like you said, Vegas played a strong, like 4 solid lines. The Panthers did not have that.
Yeah.
It's like 17-year-olds playing 15-year-olds.
Yeah, Matthew Kachuk played those last few games. His family members and that had to get him out of bed, and the trainers had to tie his skates. He couldn't bend over to tie his skates because he had a broken sternum.
Yeah.
Ouch. Well, I'll say this. So to where you are now, this is my 3rd season watching this team, and I feel proud to watch them grow up. I can't imagine how you feel, because now they're pretty tough, and they look after each other. And I'm watching these games, and there's Donnybrooks and melees, and you didn't have that a couple years ago.
No.
They were a bunch of little kids. Now they're men. And I like seeing that.
I think, Rod, they really learned what it takes last year. And I tell the story. I remember driving home after that New Year's Day game last year against the Rangers when they lost. And we were, 7 points out of a wild card spot. And not playing well. And there's heat on the team. And there's heat on the coach and that. And I'm like, oh, no. But it was amazing when you look back. When you talk to Paul Maurice, he never wavered in his confidence, but he said they're starting to understand what it takes to win consistently and especially in the playoffs. And at the time, I'm looking at him, and I'm like, Mo, you just lost 4 of the last 5, and you're 7 to 8 points out of a wild card spot. I think he's halfway crazy. Sly like a fox. It's a process. And he says, we have the personnel. They're getting it. They're starting to get it. It's baby steps. We're going to stumble a little bit, but it's going to come. It's going to come. And sure enough, it started to snowball, and the way they needed to play and that. The biggest thing, I think, the strength of the Florida Panthers, and I was talking to somebody the other day, right now, is there a team in the NHL that's tougher to play against? Like, I'm not talking about the Colorado Avalanche that can just beat you with speed and with so much talent to McKinnon and all that. Teams going and playing the Florida Panthers, whether it's on the road or at home or whatever, and going, oh boy, this is not going to be a good.
It's going to be a fight for.
It's not going to, like I like to say, it's not going to be a church picnic. It's going to be a tough game. That's the reputation that the Panthers have become. They're very tough to play against. They'll play that heavy game. They can play chippy. Then they've got some players that will play on the edge with a lot of emotion. But I think they learned a lot about themselves and what they need to do with the personnel that they have and the coaching staff and the system, that they know right now that they can play with anyone. They can beat anyone on any given night. And I think they feel pretty confident in that and going down the stretch run.
Well, regardless, them losing in the final last year, they went to the final when they almost didn't even make the playoffs. And that alone, I think once you get over the pain of losing the Stanley Cup and whatever, that's what does instill that confidence.
Yeah.
Hey, look what we did last year.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
There was a huge learning curve last year.
For sure. There always is, like Wayne says. You
and
have
especially, and these guys tasted towards the end of the season. And here's another one. Towards in March, was it whatever, the team was still up and down, and that lost that tough game, did not play well in Ottawa. Playing 2 nights later in Toronto. Toronto won like 6 straight, and Austin Matthews is scoring a gazillion goals. And Sergei Bobrovsky is sick, not even with the team. We got to start Alex Lyon, the Lion King. We're down. That's when Paul Maurice had the meltdown on the bench, screaming up and down, the only time he's ever done it. And all of a sudden they respond. They come back. They score late in the 3rd period. Montour scores in overtime. Woo! Away they went.
It was a turning point.
It was the absolute turning point. And all of a sudden and then they became very tough to play against. They believed in themselves, and everything started clicking, and the Nick Cousins scoring goals and the Ryan Lombergs chipping in, and that everybody's playing to their role. And that's what it takes. You talk to these players, the Gretzkys and Messiers and Mario Lemieux, anyone that's won multiple Stanley Cups, there's a point in the season where everything has to be galvanized and everything has to be solidified and everybody's all on the same page and all on that wagon. There's nobody falling off. There's nobody pushing it the other way. Everybody's together and away you go. And that's what the Panthers, that's at that point, that's where they went and what they did in shocking the Bruins in the first round. And that was something I think Panther fans will never forget.
No, that's unforgettable. Jason in Red Deer had a question for you, Serena. He says, everybody knows that Gretzky is your favorite player. She's got a 99 tattoo. He says, who's your number 2 all-time NHL player?
That's a toss-up between Ryan Smith and Mark Messier.
Not Joe Sakic? No. I would have said Joe Sakic.
Oh, you know I love Joe. But no. What about you?
Yeah,
Who'd you grow up your favorite?
Well, growing up, it was Bobby Orr. I mean, we only got Hockey Night in Canada. I love Bobby Orr. I love Daryl Sittler. I was a big Boya Salming fan too, growing up, and to be able to play against him, my first game in Madison or in the Maple Leaf Gardens, and we're out there for warm up or whatever, and it's Hockey Night in Canada that night. And there's Boya Salming, the way he could skate so effortlessly and coming around so I would go and time it. So every time he came up by the red line, I would be right there, right beside him or whatever, and I'd be skating with him. And then he'd turn this way, and I'd turn and make sure that, and I'm hustling because he had those long strides or whatever. And to be able to play against Boya Salming, Denny Potvin was another one that I loved, idolized growing up, and to be able to play against him and then obviously work with him for many, many years was a big treat. I played with Joe Sakic in his first couple of years in Quebec, and we knew that he was going to be a special player when he first got drafted. In that, oh man, was he talented and shoot the puck and stop on a dime and that. So I was always a big Gretzky fan, a big Mario Lemieux fan. And I tell people now, I'm 60 years old, that I was very fortunate to play in what I call the greatest era of the NHL, because you had the Paul Coffeys and the Nick Lidstroms, naming defense. Never played against Bobby Orr or whatever, but the Mario Lemieux and the Wayne Gretzkys and the Mark Messiers and the Theo Fleury's and the stars of the Ronnie Francis. I played in that era. Yeah. And I played against Guy Lafleur and played with Guy Lafleur. He was on the team.
Let's also not forget Fuhr, Belfour.
Oh, yeah.
The
Broder. Yeah, all the best.
Yeah, right. Patrick Waugh.
Yeah.
I mean, all those players in that. Very special memories that I was able to play against them. I tell stories of it, and growing up, when we come out with Quebec, we had a pretty good team. The Stashny brothers and Michel Goulet and Dan Bouchard and Clint Malarchuk in goal and blah 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 blah. And we'd come out to Alberta, and so many teams would go 0 for Alberta. The one game we went into Edmonton, we were up. We took a couple of power plays, and we were up like 4-1 after the first period. Dale Hunter takes a major high sticking penalty, and we lost 10-4. In Edmonton, and we came out after the game, and my mother's crying. She had her hair all done. She was crying, and then the next night we'd have to go into Calgary and play that powerhouse. And we lost. I think it was 4-0. We lost in Calgary, and we never touched the puck. And we weren't the only ones that went 0 for Alberta, that's for sure. But that was those were some tough trips coming out. We always seemed to win in Winnipeg, and we always seemed to win in Vancouver, but we would never win in
But nobody did, yeah.
When you played with Guy Lafleur, obviously he'd have slowed down a little bit, but how beautiful was it watching him skate?
Amazing. And what a classy individual in that. He was at the end of his career, and he really wanted to come back. And then I just went to training camp with him, and then I got traded at the end of training camp to the Rangers. But to spend training camp with him and what he brought in the class and what he had done in his career, and that was really, really special.
Well, I'll tell you what, it was a joy to watch you then. It's a joy to watch you now. Randy Moller, thank you for coming in. Appreciate you.
Nice to have.
Yes.
Nice to be here.
And we want to mention, too, of course, that we're brought to you by DraftKings, the official sports betting partner of the NFL. The crown is yours. Also, Beach House Pompano, a scenic rooftop restaurant on the shores of Pompano Beach. And right across the street, Bresco, brand new, a tropical outpost serving only the freshest tacos and lush jungle vibes, located at 225 North Pompano Beach Boulevard. For Randy Moller, Serena Taylor, Benny Boy, Kit, and Christian, are you there? See you next week here on the Cats and Bolts podcast.